Howdy, y'all. I thought we would do today. That sounded really creepy, didn't it? It was the throatiness to it. Anyway, I thought what we would do today is do another one of my famous talking videos where I just sit down and talk about something. So, the topic I selected today is, I don't know why it came to me, but I think because I was thinking about one specific pen that I own. And that topic is what makes fountain pens special. Where you can certainly give a very cynical answer to that, which is, well, probably cognitive dissonance reduction, because you spend a lot of money on something that writes. You could also just use a $1 Bic. So, because you spend so much money, you have to make up with some sort of rationalization for you spending that much, and that rationalization is probably, well, I really love it. But I don't want to take that cynical route, although in all reality that probably is part of the answer. But it's not really the route, or as we would say, the route that I would like to take. I've come up with a couple of reasons, and I mentioned a pen at the start, and so I felt I should show it to you. It's not a pen. I know that. I've used pens before. This is a little pen case, but in that case are two pens. And if you're a regular viewer of the channel, then you know which pens are in here. I'll take your bets now. What's in here? Etc. In here are two pens that belong to my granddad. And the case is kind of funny. It's by B.R.E. B.R.E. is you can't read that, can you? It's a Dutch brand of small leather goods. And there's two pens in here. There is a Parker 75. Oh, that looks weird with this camera. It's probably the light. It's dark. I have a light on, and there's sort of Venetian blinds there. Anyway, and then there is a ballpoint. And I'm sorry if you're a regular viewer and you've heard this story a million times before, but for those of you who do not know it, these pens are special because they belong to my granddad, who passed away in 2010. He left them to me. He insisted that the ballpoint would be engraved. So it's me being Dutch. It actually has a Dutch engraving, which I can show you. I don't know what the point of showing you that is, but it has a Dutch engraving. And where's the camera? Here's the camera. It actually says Van Opa, which means from Grandpa. And so for as long as I can remember, my granddad has had these pens. My mother and grandmother gave him that set of pens when he was sort of the Dutch equivalent of knighted for services rendered. I don't think the details of the story matter that much. The Dutch knighthood, unfortunately, does not come with a title like Sir, which would have been pretty awesome. Anyway, it did not. But as a commemoration, it was something that meant a lot to him, that he was knighted, and that there was this ceremony, and that there was like a lot. This happens to a lot of people every year, right? But to him, it was a big deal, and to commemorate that, he actually got a little. There's an actual sort of a medal that you get, but there's also a small one you can put in your lapel. And whenever he wore a suit, he had that in there. It meant a lot to him. So my mother and my grandmother selected that set of pens and gave that to him to commemorate that thing. Now, then in 2010, he passed away, but shortly before he passed away, he told me that he left me those pens. And that we had to get the ballpoint engraved, hence the engraving. And I'm not tearing up, by the way. I've talked a lot today, so I'm going to have a sip of tea from my ridiculously tiny cup. I mean, really, like this is anyway. It meant a lot to him, and that to me is probably the most important aspect of why a fountain pen is important, because they tell a personal story. it would not have been the same if upon his deathbed my granddad would have said, here's a $2 Papermate mechanical pencil, I leave you this, right? With all due respect for the Papermate, it's actually a pretty nice, but you get the point. So the personal story of a fountain pen, I think, is a very important one. And this is a fountain pen ballpoint set. But for as long as I can remember, my granddad had that set always within arm's reach or within arm's length. He would do crossword puzzles. At some point he started doing that. I was very young, and he was pretty much addicted. He would do this multiple hours a day. And he would sit at the dining table, and then behind him was a little sort of footstool, and on that was this. It was literally within reach, always. And he would use the ballpoint for his crossword puzzles, and he would use the fountain pen whenever he had to sign anything, like a check or whatever. Signing was done with the fountain pen. I don't think he ever cleaned the fountain pen. It was just used with cartridges, Quink, royal blue ink, and it was just used all the time. It was just used. And again, it's part of the story. I'll shut up about these pens now. But what I'm trying to say is that makes them special. Because when I see these pens, when I look at them, I don't use them all the time because I don't want to damage or lose them, right? When I do use this pen, especially the fountain pen, I try to ink it up once a year around my granddad's dying date. That sounds really morbid, but you know what I mean, the day he passed away. I try to ink it up in that month. And it creates a bit of a connection. I don't have any sort of weird paranormal theories about this, but it's just a simple matter of, then I see that pen and it makes me smile because it gives me, it brings back the memories of what he was like and how I would use that and how he was so incredibly fond of that set of pens. So that, I think, is a very powerful aspect of fountain pens. Now, of course, there are pens and pens. There are more expensive pens, there are cheaper pens, but whatever pen has meaning to you, that doesn't have to be $1,000 pen. This is not $1,000 pen. It never was. But when you are truly fond of something like that, a personal object that you can use, again, that ballpoint was used 7 days a week. I remember when they lived in an apartment, we would sometime, when I was staying there, we would walk to the local book/office supply store. We would buy refills for his ballpoint because he went through them, because he used that thing all the time, right? So those things really matter and make a pen special because it's an everyday object that you use. If it's something like, well, here is my great-grandmother's ladle, that's very nice, but you probably don't use that ladle every day unless you have a soup fetish, right? Right. So that's a little different. There are, of course, other objects. A watch is also a very personal object that people tend to wear every day, or every other day, or whatever, how many watches you have. I really try not to get into watches for that reason. So you have a few that you like, you have one that you like, whatever. Anyway, that I think is something that makes pen special. There's a personal connection. The next thing I will say, and I mean, I'll be briefer about my final points because this is almost 10 minutes already, but I did want to tell that whole story to explain that this is the very special meaning that pens can have for people. And the nice thing about the Parker is that it's a Parker pen, is that it has a year code, so I could actually date the year that pen was made and most certainly given to him on that date. Anyway, I think the next important aspect that makes fountain pens special is rituals. Fountain pens are surrounded by rituals. There is the inking up of the pen. Whether that means you pop a cartridge in, draw up ink from a bottle with a cartridge converter, a piston-filled pen, a vacuumatic pen, it doesn't matter. But there is a certain ritual in filling the pen. It's not the same as I'm really picking on this poor mechanical pencil, but it's not as simple as, and it writes. And at some point I take off this bit and I put more refill. It's not like that. A fountain pen requires a bit more care, right? Not only in inking it up, but also in cleaning it again, taking the ink out, flushing it through with water until it's clear. Like these kinds of things, I always find that a very relaxing moment with pens, and I sometimes really like during the day if I drain a pen during work. I've used it up and it runs dry. To come home, to eat, and to clean the pen, to have that ritual of just a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, depending on what kind of ink I used, or if there was Bay State Blue in it, you throw it out. But beyond that, it's nice to have that ritual of cleaning the pen, taking care of it, drying it off, letting it dry, putting it out to dry, these kinds of things, whatever that ritual is for you. But it's something that is a very, I find it soothing ritual. You can let your mind wander and you're just taking care of that product and keeping it in a working condition, which I think is very nice. So the rituals, I also think, make a fountain pen special, much more special than a $1 Bic crystal, and it's empty. You can't even properly refill it. You throw out the whole thing. So it stays with you, and that adds to that personal touch. And you use those rituals to take care of that product. I think another nice thing is the pen over time becomes an extension of you, and sometimes I find people have the idea that I own thousands of pens. All my pens fit in a 40 pen case. They like it in there, but with ample room to spare. There's a lot of, so I don't own that many pens. Yes, I know I own a couple, but I mean not hundreds, definitely not thousands. What I'm trying to say is I actually use the pens that I have. I rotate them regularly. I use them all, and that just creates a wonderful connection to the pens that you have. You really use them. They become a part of you. You get to know, and this sounds dreadfully esoteric, but you get to know their temperaments. You get to know, oh, that one really likes this ink, needs a wetter ink. This one is actually really good if I'm using really smooth paper. Otherwise, the feedback is a bit like these kinds of things. That too makes a pen special. It becomes an extension of you. You get to know that pen. And I know this may sound like an exaggeration, and I know it may sound a little ridiculous, but I actually find sometimes when I ink up a pen that I've not inked up for a while, again, I'm very selective in what pens I keep. So the pens I have I actually love. So once I ink up a pen that I've not inked up in a while, and I use it again, I get the excitement again of, wow, this is such a nice writer. It's almost like running into a friend on the street that you haven't seen in a while. And you start to talk and everything is like the old days, so to speak. That feeling, that is really something that I think makes a fountain pen special. And the final thing is something that I wrote down, and I used a ballpoint, so I genuinely cannot read my handwriting. Leisure? Oh, heirlooms! Heirlooms. Over time, as the pen of my granddad demonstrated, pens can become heirlooms. And even if if it's not you who has children, if it's not, you may be able to pass on that pen to someone at some point. And some pens, like I get messages once in a while from people who send me something like, my granddad, my dad, my mother just passed away. I found this pen in a drawer. I found you online. I understand you know something about pens. Well, that's debatable, but you didn't know that. What can you tell me about this pen? How do I clean this? How do I use it? And in those cases, I always really try to give as much detail as I can, which often I can't, because I do not know every make and model of every pen ever made. But then at least I try to refer people to, well, post a picture on the Fountain Pen Network. Guaranteed, someone will be able to identify that, because that's how it works, right? Always realize there are people who know more than you. And that's very nice. Okay? But if it's a matter of, oh, I know what that is, that's a Parker Sonnet. I tell them that. And I can give them cleaning instructions or whatever. Almost never. No, it's not a sentence. Hardly ever. Hell, it's getting late. Hardly ever do I get the question, is this worth anything? Sometimes I do. And I always feel a little sad when I read that. But most of the times, people are interested in actually using the pen because it's an heirloom. It's something that belonged to a family member, a father, grandfather, mother, grandmother, whatever. Sometimes, and this is rarer, but it happens sometimes that it's an actual vintage pen that belonged to a great-grandparent, and that, you know, that's been passed on, you know, through the many decades. And I think that is very, very interesting. I don't see anyone doing that with, say, a paper-made mechanical pencil. Right? Right. Unless it's a very special paper-made mechanical pencil. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is I think that is definitely another factor that makes fountain pens special. They are, and I mean, that doesn't have to mean it's a $1,000 pen. That could be a Pilot Metropolitan that gets passed on from a granddad to a grandchild one day or something like that. But it's just special. It's a special gift because it's so personal. Writing is an expression of you. Your handwriting is yours. And some people have complexes about their handwriting. But no matter how legible or illegible it is, it's uniquely yours. And you can express that with a nice pen. And again, that can be a $5 Chinese fountain pen. It doesn't matter, right? What matters is that it's your pen. And that's what makes it special. So, please let me know if this was somewhat interesting to you. And please post about what in your mind makes a fountain pen special. If you watched this video, you've watched up to this point, then you clearly have some sort of affinity with fountain pens. What is it that makes it special? What is it for you? I like to read those things because often those are my favorite comments where people share something of you know what makes things special in their mind. So please let me know that. That's it. I hope this was useful. I'm glad to see you later. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.